you always understand in these positions that you're going to take a lot of criticism, and especially in this day and age. I mean, the platforms that are out there for people to just, lambaste you, they're all out there. As Jerry was leaving, he turned to them and he goes, now, your dad's always been liked up until now, not anymore. So he's like, no matter what he does, you're not going to be liked anymore. So, and he was right. I mean, he's right. So
what's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central. And we just got a few things to talk to you guys about this. We will mainly be focusing on the John Paxson interview over on Stacey King's podcast. What is it? Gimme THE Hot Sauce, I think is what it's called. It's my first time actually listening to that podcast. I didn't even know he had one. I'm definitely going to be tuned in more often now, but to take away and come off that. So I know there's been a lot of talk on whether the Bulls were going to go after or possibly sign Paul Millsap. He actually ended up signing with the Nets. And that makes sense when you look at like where Paul Millsap's career is. He's a veteran, and that gives him a way better chance to actually get a ring if that was his focus. But the fact that the Bulls were considered, there was some interest there from him, I think just bodes well for how this organization and the way that it's viewed is being changed. And, that continues to be something with AK and Eversley and what they're doing for this franchise. And, we were in contention. And so, and the thing with Paul Millsap is he was going to be more than likely, if he signed here, a guy who comes in, he fills a role, he plays some minutes for us, but he was more so, you wanted that veteran presence on the bench. And, it's going to be interesting to see what the Bulls do to get us more big men, to shore up that big man lineup, because like I said before on the episode, if there's a major injury to either Patrick Williams or Vooch, we're fucked in the front court, just to put it frank. It completely throws off everything else that we could possibly do with our lineup. So, I have, if nothing else, AK and Eversley have shown that we need to trust in them in this offseason, and they're going to do what they can and what's in the best interest of the team. And so because of that, I'm not too worried about it right now. Now, but you can't bet on health. That's the thing. You don't really want to bet on everyone's going to be able to stay healthy. If they can, so be it. Or maybe they just see more. Maybe, Seminovic is going to, maybe they're planning on him playing more minutes. Maybe he showed them enough to where they think that they're going to be able to make him a rotation player instead of sending him to the D League possibly. Maybe, maybe the people, the big men that we do have on the roster that they have more faith in. We'll see. But either way, you would like to think, or it seems like they're going to have to add some type of big man to this roster, whether it's through training camp, or during the season. And, that we'll just continue to monitor that and see what they end up doing. Now, something that happened that kind of went as fast as it came is that LaMarcus Aldridge, who was cleared to play basketball, there was reported some interest from the Bulls there. And even, I think the same day that it was tweeted out, about a couple of hours later, it was said that he's actually going to be signing back with the Nets, which makes sense considering how his career ended. And him thinking that he wasn't going to be medically cleared, everything kind of tracks there. And so, it makes sense, and it makes sense for him. For as a Bulls fan, when you hear that there's some mutual interest there with LaMarcus Aldridge, you think that may be a perfect big man to add. But there's still, maybe there's a trade that we don't see. We've talked about as a fandom. We talked a little bit about on this podcast that Boogie Cousins is still an option there. I know and I understand why there's some issues or hesitation when it comes to Boogie Cousins, and I understand those completely. But when you look at like having a third or fourth big man off the bench in Boogie, or maybe if he's relied on a little bit more for that at the beginning of the season while the younger guys prove themselves, you can do a lot worse than Boogie. And, he doesn't stay healthy all the time. Yeah, the injury is going to hinder him some, but you would think in what the Bulls may need him to do, that he should be able to fill that pretty well. But I guess that'll remain to be seen. I've presented this question on an episode before, but I'm going to re-present it now with the new information given. Considering LaMarcus Aldridge isn't coming here, Millsap is already signed. Does that make you reevaluate? For anyone who was against the signing of Boogie Cousins before, does this now put him to the front of the line for you? And if not, who else would you guys like to see the Bulls go after to kind of fill in that big man hole. Like almost every other position, when we're all healthy, is kind of taken care of and filled to a degree. Like, Ball's going to play a lot of minutes. Russo can fill in some minutes there. Kobe White is of course going to fill in a lot. You would think a lot of the backup minutes there as one of the first guards off the bench when he is back healthy and what he can do scoring wise. And if he doesn't, then I think that pretty much tells us what's going to happen with Kobe White in the future. But almost everything, the wing is pretty much shored up as well. Both positions on the wing. It's just that big man position that really. And let me be clear, when I say that one serious injury to our front man rotation can completely fuck up our lineup, I just mean by that, like, we'll have to play smaller. People are going to have to play out of position, what that can do. But don't get me wrong, an injury to Ball, an injury to Levine, an injury to, and that goes without saying for most NBA teams. Very few NBA teams can, let me not say sustain. They can sustain depending on how the roster construction is, but it's not like it's not going to be felt if a major injury comes to one of their starters. So, we'll see what the Bulls do. AK and Eversley have I said earned my trust. I don't know if they've earned you guys. It seems like the fandom pretty much earned that trust. But we'll continue to watch out and see what goes on there. Now, next thing I want to talk about is this John Paxson interview. And so it was a really great listen. And I think for me, the biggest thing is that John Paxson seems really reflective on his time as the Bulls. And, I know a lot of people have said, just listening to some of the reactions from this interview is like, oh, he has some revisionist history. He has this. I don't take it that way. Like, listening to it, it seems sincere. And to me, the way that I took it personally wasn't that it was he was trying to do revisionist history. He was trying to paint it in a different light than what things happen. I just think that he's gained new perspective being separated from that position and also seeing like how the fan base has reacted to AK and Eversley and what they've done and the new excitement that they've brought in, and just as them being new eyes as well, and like not being as attached to some of the players that they drafted. And him talking about AK and just saying that, he gets frustrated and angry with certain things, and that's the side we've never seen of AK. And it was great, but like hearing this man talk about his tenure as running the Bulls and like the initial rebuild that they did when they basically did what AK and Eversley have done, traded almost every asset that had come into the team and completely rebuild the team in the first 2 years. Hearing them talk about Jay Williams and how they expected to be able to rebound from, build around him. And then, unfortunately, what happened there, you kind of forget that because of like just how long Paxson had run this team and everything. At least for me, I really did forget about like Jay Williams and that whole tragedy that happened. And really, they were able to continue building that team on the go even after that happened. And not a lot of teams do that. And don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying that we should excuse what happened with Paxson and Gar towards the end of their tenure. Not at all. I will maintain that it was the way that they ran this team was horrible towards the end. You would like to think they did the best they could in certain situations, but it just wasn't good. And the results weren't there. They really, after the Derrick Rose injury, that even though we had some years of still being playoff teams and still being tough outs and Jimmy Butler's ascension, we never really regained that footing of really being a contender again like it looked like we were at the height of Derrick Rose's career. But coming out of that, like to hear him talk about, even like the Eddie Curry thing and shipping him out and trying to help Eddie Curry get over certain things that he was dealing with and them realizing that he couldn't, and even saying that they sent out the best player in the deal in the Jalen Rose deal, like you to me, I took that as somebody who really is looking back at the time like, look, we did some really good things and it sucks that it ended so badly and we're remembered for the bad things, but they did do a lot of good. He talked about the Jay Williams injury and then how they drafted Kurt Heinrich after, then Ben Gordon, Luau Deng, even signing Nocioni in which he said Joakim Noah, hearing him talk about Joakim Noah and the hair thing and, telling him talking to his agent about his hair and it also highlighted like how much influence Jerry still had on this team, saying, all right, if you guys want him, but we're going to have to get him to do something with his hair. Like, that's not something that you would expect from a front office now or an NBA team. Like, I'm not saying that, you don't want your players to be kept well and presentable or stuff like that. That is fine to do and want from your team to have your team, but like, you just wouldn't hear like, oh, he's going to have to do something like you just wouldn't hear that nowadays considering the climate and everything that we lived in. But hearing him, Paxson, like I said, talk about this, it just reminded me, right? It reminded me and took me through, because as much as I have been a Bulls fan all my life, I was born in '86, and I was alive during the height of the second three-peat and everything with Jordan's career, but I wasn't really as huge as a basketball fan as I was. The baby Bulls were like my first coming into teenage and adult years of really loving this team and this team being mine. And of course, that Derrick Rose era and then the Jimmy Butler era were both, at my adulthood. And pretty much Paxson has run this team from up until like my whole adult life, basically, when you looked at it. And so, it took me through those memories. And, while, yes, we haven't won a title, we've probably only had 2, maybe 3 teams that they were considered really, really contenders possibly to win a title. And that was during that height of the Derrick Rose career in that time. But they really did some good building with this team over the years. And I know that, they've had a lot of misses, right? The Tyrus Thomas one is a miss that you can look at. Trying to think of some other ones. Of course, there were other ones as well. There were misses that they did in the drafts where, in hindsight, you could think, hey, had they did this, maybe we could have won a title. But a lot of those things as well is we probably wouldn't have had Derrick Rose if some of these things wouldn't have been done. Overall, Paxson was able to put this team and take this team from, being at its low, really, after the Jordan era, to making us back to a contender. And while we didn't get a lot of marquee free agents, the way that they built these teams, when you look at it, from a, what was it, like a 23, 27 win team to the next year winning like 43 to 45 games, and then us continuing to ascend there for a while. And I know we were stuck at like 41 wins. We had 41 and 41 the year before we drafted Derrick Rose. And it's easy as a fan, and when you love a team, when you truly, truly love a franchise for what it is, and you're not like a fair weather fan, you don't just come in and out depending on if the team's good or not. It's easy just to remember the bad. And I don't want to, like, I know that the Paxson interview is going to get a lot of hate, and I don't mean, and I'm not trying to be counter programming to that. It's just like, for me, again, because I was a kid, a very small child during the Jordan era, and while I know how important that team was, and I remember that second three-peat like it was yesterday watching those games with my dad, the Bulls team didn't really, that was me as a watching the game with my dad, right? And loving my dad's team. It was the baby Bulls era where this team became my team, and the team that I later on, when Derrick Rose was playing, that I now shared with my son. And my son becoming my daughter being a Chicago Bulls fan. Like, these are things that I've shared with them. And looking at it now, like, my son's 15, my daughter's 13. This era is probably going to be the first era that they really, in their own fandom, remember the Chicago Bulls and whatever happens going into this. So, Paxson had a lot of misses. He did. And like I said, I don't want to romanticize his tenure as being all good. But when you really look at like the totality of not just to critique him for the misses, but also to look at the hits and some of the things that he were able to build without a superstar. I don't think we had a superstar on this team until Derrick Rose. We've had one, and Jimmy Butler as well, even though he's gotten even better since he left. But we really didn't have superstars on this team for the majority of Paxson's run, and they were able to put out competitive, tough basketball teams, and that's kind of what you want to see. Now, hearing Paxson talk about AK and them coming in and like being able, sometimes be a bouncing board for AK, and to see the excitement of this franchise, and to say that, we did get Stella as a front office for him and Gar. Like I said, that's the part that I don't take as revisionist history. And it's hard while you're still in something and continue, and you draft these players, you have a relationship with these players, you want, and you see their career for what you thought it was going to project to kind of separate yourself from that. And him having now that time away where he's not running the team, and to look at what this new front office is doing and coming in and making these moves and really completely turning over this team and this roster, you're able to sit back and think, okay, yeah, and we probably wouldn't have made these moves because of XYZ reason. And that's how I looked at it listening to this podcast. To say that Gar and Paxson got stale is an understatement. I think that as the NBA changes so much, really like every 5 years, when you look at how long he was in this position, it makes sense that he got stale, and it made sense that a change needed to be made. And, hats off to him for realizing it, right, and stepping down or whatever, because I'm sure had just with the relationship he has with the Reinsdorfs, if he wanted to stay on, he probably could have. And, it's good that he was able to get out of the way of the franchise for the betterment of the franchise. And, you even heard Stacey talk on the podcast about how, it for his teammates, it kind of hurts for them, or they say like some of the critiques that come against Paxson, and they know that he loves this franchise. And I don't ever have Gar. I don't know much about Gar. I never really felt connected to Gar. To me, it was still always Paxson running the team. I know Gar had power too as well, but I don't doubt that Gar Forman loves the Chicago Bulls, that he loves this franchise, that he loved a lot of the players that he drafted as well. But sometimes you can hurt what you love. You can hurt what you love by being too attached to it. And, and that's what I think it ended up happening here. Gar Forman just seems like a dickhead to me. Paxson to me is like, it's great that he stepped away. And it obviously worked for this franchise. It worked for our future. Everything looks so much brighter at this point. And it was just an interesting listen. It was a great time to listen and hear him talk about that, and even sharing stories with Michael of like them being on the team together before either of them were pros, and they actually shared a room. And him saying he didn't know Michael as well, but one thing that they did know about Michael is that he expected his teammates to work and greatness out of the teammates. And when players share stories of Jordan, it's always going to be something that we love to hear and get that insight on Michael as a competitor. But at this point, we all know he's the greatest competitor of all time in everything, not just basketball. The man was competitive in every goddamn thing that he did. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about the Paxson thing. And like I said, I understand why a lot of the backlash is coming from this, because of like, it sucks to hear somebody, try to talk about things and put a positive spin on it or whatever else, after they really ran, this team into the ground in many people's opinions. But outside of that, I really do think that they did, Paxson really did a lot of good for this franchise. Even bringing in Skiles, Thibodeau, and even Vinny Del Negro to a degree. Like, I think Vinny Del Negro was a great coach to have as you were trying to see what you had in Derek, and you still had a fairly young team before, like they were really contenders. I can see a lot of that. And like I said, the misses everybody's going to talk about. The misses go on and on and on. Like the draft misses, especially towards the back half of really Paxson's run, it seemed like we never quite got what we wanted out of most of the players that we drafted. You guys remember Marcus Teague, right? You remember Marcus Teague? You remember like that whole like push for him to start that year that Derek wasn't, and people were like, well, why don't they put Teague on the floor? He can do some. You remember that? As well as the Doug McDermott trade. Oh God, they really did something. Look at like who was drafted after. Look at who we traded for Doug McDermott. Had we just kept those two picks, we're looking at a drastically different run for this roster and talent on this team. But woulda, coulda, shoulda. You can all day, and you can really do that with any GM. Some to a lesser degree, admittedly, but really just if you focus on the misses and look at what could have done after you have that hindsight, you can always see where a GM could have done better. Or president of basketball operations. But of course, we all, I think, are pretty much as a fan base overall happy with who we have at running the front office now. And, we'll continue to hold them accountable as well. And we'll see in 15 years if they get stale or not. So, maybe having this conversation again. And maybe my son taking over this podcast and having the same conversation I'm having right now of kind of fondly looking or whatever. So, we'll see how that goes. But it's a great time to be a Bulls fan. By the way, and I don't do a lot of I don't like to like plug myself. I want to keep this focused on the Bulls, but NBA 2K22 is actually releasing this upcoming Friday. I'll be getting the day of release as I always do. If you want to play me online, my PSN is the same as my Twitter it's CEO Haize. So you can add me on PSN if you want to play 2K. I don't always play as the Bulls either, by the way. So like if you're just interested or looking for some competition, day one, I'll do that. I actually took a year off of playing online on NBA. I didn't play online at all with NBA 2K21 on PlayStation 5. I just I think it was the pandemic and everything. I kind of just wanted to, and then the game wasn't the greatest to me. But you know, they look to have made a lot of improvements with NBA 2K22. It's still a bit off-putting that they haven't like released actual like gameplay footage at all, and we're 4 days away from the release of the goddamn game. But I'll hold that back. Yeah, but let me know what else you guys are thinking about the Bulls. Let me know what you think about the Paxson interview. What was said, what he said. You know, did hearing him talk about it kind of remind you of you know, just them really building that team from almost a nothing team to we went from nothing to a team that was tough, and like, not that teams hated playing against us, but we were competitive every night we played against people, to a playoff team, to a, you know, a tough out in the playoffs, to a contender, and then all the way back down on the other side of that slope. So let me know what you guys think about that. I appreciate all the support. We passed 150 watched hours on YouTube just a couple of days ago, and that's crazy to me. To be this platform's been around less than a month. Well, the Chicago Bulls Central has been around less than a month. You guys have really been supporting and enjoying and watching the podcast, and I appreciate it. Leave comments down below. Make sure you like the video. If you like it, also subscribe. It definitely helps us grow, and we want to keep growing this platform. I know I said on the last one I will be adding a Discord in here shortly. I will be adding Discord to the platform as well, so we can have those conversations about the Bulls. Or if there's another Bulls Discord or whatever going on, I could just join that one rather than, you know, have our fandom even more split up on where to go. So let me know about those things. But this has been another episode of Chicago Bulls Central. You can follow us at Bulls Central Pod on Twitter. You can follow me personally at CEO Haize, at CEO Haize. I appreciate every single one of you guys. Go Bulls. Peace.